I did. I actually prepared on that more than normal.
Look at you.
You know me. I learn, kind of. I don't learn how to quit killing myself, but other than that,
Eventually it'll pay off.
absolutely.
When Bleacher Report wants to be like us.
That would be cool. All right. Did we pop up in the group?
Yeah, we're in Facebook. YouTube and Facebook popped up as notifications for me.
Cool. I have never in. Oh, why is that on our video?
What was that?
It was a comment that Andy left on another post, and it's in our group for some reason. All right,
That's
we
funny.
got Chris Resendez in the house, Taylor Cornell in the house. Give us 1 second, guys. We're just making sure everything's up, running right, and we will get right into this episode. And we're going to talk a little NFL news, and once I find out what's happened. Why is it doing that?
Oh, Paul. Paul is ready to get tore up because we're talking Oakland Raiders, and we know Paul loves Antonio Brown.
Ain't gonna get tore up for me, man. Seahawks beat writer says Ed Dixon will be sidelined 4 to 5 weeks with a knee injury. Good thing we're all rostering Ed Dixon.
He's my favorite. Oh, we got a little Sully in the house. He's going to give us his
Sully.
2 cents.
All right. Welcome to the Dynasty Heat Seekers podcast. Tonight, we've got our normal Wednesday schedule where we give you some NFL news notes, talk about a few bits from around the league, and then we will get into covering the Oakland Raiders. They don't have a lot of people showing up on the ADP, and not very many of them are very high. So this should be an interesting podcast. This is a team that definitely has some players that could come out of nowhere and end up being fantasy relevant just because there's so few of them, and we don't really know what they're going to do. So this should be fun tonight. First off, Craig Bullock, the newest member of the Roto Heat team, is in the house. Welcome, Craig. Why don't you fill in and tell everybody like where you're from, what you've done, and just let them know who Craig is.
Hell yeah. Hi, guys. I'm actually from New Mexico, way out in the desert, but my whole family is from Chicago and the Chicagoland area. So I'm a big Chicago sports fan. Before jumping on this team, I wrote fantasy and fantasy analysis last year for Sports Mockery, and anybody from Chicago is going to be familiar with those guys. And now I live out in the desert where it's way too hot with my wife and little baby, and get to hang out with you guys.
Sweet.
Awesome. Well, we are very glad to have you on the team. I love that you've hit the ground running with a lot of enthusiasm for what we're doing. And, you know, me being a Chicago fan, I'm definitely familiar with Sports Mockery and all the news and stuff that they drop for Chicago sports. So if you're a Chicago fan, make sure you check out Sports Mockery. It's a great site. But we are glad that you're with us and not with them anymore. So thanks for that, Craig.
Well, thanks, boys.
Glad to have you, brother. Glad to have you.
We also have Brad Menendez on this podcast tonight, and last night he filled in for me. He allowed me to get more than 4 hours of sleep for the first time and probably a month. And the rest of August is going to be a little bit brutal too. We are getting ready for this season, but I want to let everybody know that Thursday nights he is still on with the Dynasty Roundtable. And we were talking a little bit about what's going to happen come time the season starts. Obviously Thursday night football, so there will be some news regarding that coming up here soon. But Brad, how you been?
I'm good, man. I'm just letting these guns out to air. I see the guys in the
Right?
chat are excited that I've brought the gun show to the episode tonight.
Sun's out, guns out. Uh, yeah, they're trying to limit. The left side of the country is trying to limit the amount of usage of those guns you've got there, buddy. You're gonna have to
It's not going to happen.
watch out.
You can't. My amendments will not be broken. These things will be out.
So let's see. Let's see what news we've got going on right now. Obviously, the Zeke news has been pretty big. News comes out that he says he's not going to play without a new contract. Doesn't matter whether he loses the year of free agency or it gets pushed back. However you want to say it. I didn't word that very well. But then news came out that there have been contracts put in front of all three of the offensive stars for the Cowboys: Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, and Zeke. And Zeke's rumored AAV is around $13 million, which would give him about a $10 million raise this year, a $4 million raise next year, and then obviously, depending on how long it is, he would be making $13 million a year. Don't know any guarantees, anything like that. First off, Craig, we'll just throw you right in the fire. Do you think that Dallas and Zeke are going to get a deal done before the season? And if you were Zeke and they offered you $13 million, are you signing that in a big hurry?
Yeah, I think Dallas gets something done with Zeke. Although I'm starting to waver on it a little bit because Jerry Jones is all of a sudden kind of puffing out his chest and dropping little news bites that make it seem like he doesn't think that any team needs a real running back. But I think they'll get it done because they got a Super Bowl window open right now, and Zeke's a beast. And I think Jerry knows that maybe Dak isn't good enough to be without a running back like Zeke. And I don't think Pollard or anyone else on that team can really fill in for him. Now, as far as if I am Zeke, do I take the money? Man, I don't know. Running backs they get so beat up and just tossed out in the league. Everybody else gets to play for, twice or three times as long. So I think I can't blame the guy for trying to maximize his income.
Yeah, I definitely agree, but it's hard to think because the NFL's kind of shifting, and Gurley got his $15 million deal, and then the arthritis comes up in his knee, and I think that is going to scare teams off from giving somebody $15 million. So you've only got a small window in between there. Like, he's not getting more than Gurley. He's not getting more than $15 million a year. And then that $13 million. So there's only a small window in there if that is really what he was offered. So if I was him, I'd be getting that pen ready. He might be able to wiggle out a little bit more, but how much do you really want to push that? Brad, what's your opinion on Zeke, the $13 million offer, and his holdout?
Yeah, typically Jerry Jones folds like an accordion, so I'm really surprised he's held out this long. I mean, I've kudos to him for growing a pair. I mean, it's
Right?
it's a weird time to do that. I mean, he's your star player. Your offense runs through him. I would think that you would figure out a way to make it work. Whether it's see, and the thing that I think that I'm really surprised that more teams haven't taken the Kirk Cousins approach, where it's just a fully guaranteed contract that's maybe less money because it's fully guaranteed. And Zeke would be the perfect opportunity for Jerry Jones to say, "Listen, I'm going to give you." 12 million a year fully guaranteed, like no matter what, you're getting this money for 2-3 years, and see if that shakes out. I can't see him holding out though. Like, Jerry Jones needs him, probably more than he needs them. Obviously, he could sit out and do better than Lev Bell did this year with the Jets if he waited another year. But the interesting thing is the market's going to get saturated of all these high-end running backs, Gordon, Zeke, all these guys start sitting out. It's going to cause a lot of problems, for the running back market as a whole. Ultimately, I expect him to play, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think that I think they're gonna get the deal done. I think they're probably really close to getting the deal done. And right now, I think it is just everybody puffing out their chest and trying to get the most or pay the least, however you want to put it, whichever side you want to throw out. But I did find it very funny that Jerry comes out and he's like, you don't need a rushing champ to win a Super Bowl. And then you look back and since he's bought the
Emmett.
Cowboys, he's won 3 championships, and Emmitt Smith led the league in rushing during all 3 seasons that he won the championship. So it's a little counterintuitive there from to throw that out there, because like you're over or I don't know, I'm sure people have you may have had a leader, but you are 3-0 in the Super Bowls with a leading rusher. So I thought that was kind of funny. It's kind of funny. Corey says Zeke needs to get his money now, like he's JT Wentworth. Thanks for that, Corey. It is true though. I wrote an article last year about the curse of 400 touches for a running back, and what happens to a running back after they get 400 touches. And he was very near that 400 mark last year. They have used the shit out of him, so he definitely needs to get his money before it's too late, because if he gets injured over the next 2 years that he's under contract, then like the most he's ever going to make is $9 million in a year. And I'm sorry for what he's done for the Cowboys in that offense, and Dak Prescott. Like, Dak Prescott should be writing that boy a check. Craig said something about it. I just looked up his stats. Dak has started 48 games over his 3 years, all 48, and he has 25 interceptions in those 48 games. In the 8 games that Zeke has missed, he has thrown 7 of those 25 interceptions. So he turns the ball over a lot more when Zeke's not on the field. Also, I believe it was 7 of those games he threw for 210 or less yards in all of them. And I think he had one that was like a 107-yard performance. So his numbers without Zeke are not very good. So let's move over to Melvin Gordon. Same deal, holding out, wants that contract. Rumor is he's been offered $10 million. Brad, what are your thoughts on Melvin Gordon, and is he going to show up anytime soon?
Yeah, he's the one of the two. He's the one that I see more likely to sit out. I mean, because of they're so far apart. I mean, everything that I've heard, it doesn't seem like they're even in the same planet. Melvin Gordon wants more than even closer to Gurley money, where LA knows what they've got. Eckler and Jackson are fairly solid in replace of Gordon. So, we saw it last year. I mean, they filled in admirably. So if I'm the Chargers, they don't need Gordon nearly as much as the Cowboys do, because Phillip Rivers runs that offense fine without him. So I would expect if any of them are holding out for the entire year, it's Gordon. But it's hard to see that. I mean, I know we saw last year with Le'Veon, but it's still, for me, it's like, how is a guy really going to give up all that money and just sit at home on the couch,
Yeah, I agree to the most part. Craig, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree, and I think Melvin needs the Chargers a lot more than they need Melvin. He's good. Don't get me wrong. He's been great with that team. They're a good team, but he's got knee issues. He's already been run a little bit into the ground. He has a hard time staying on the field. I don't see them stepping out and giving him any more. So he's got a perception problem. He thinks he's worth more than he is, and it's probably not him. It's probably his agent, right? This Bilbo cat. A lot of times it's the agents that will kind of implant things in a player's mind, I think. So I think it's probably time for his agent to maybe walk it back a little, get him back there. He doesn't want to start missing games. He could find himself traded and then be in a worse situation, which I don't think he would love. So I don't know. It's just a bad situation for him. I think he needs to get back there, and I think he will. I don't see either one of these guys missing like a whole season like Bell. I think Zeke's back there before week 1. Maybe Gordon misses a game or two. It's really hard to tell. His situation is really weird.
Yeah, and I definitely agree that Melvin doesn't have the leverage that Zeke does. A couple guys in the chat have said, like, the Cowboys need Zeke a lot, and it's true. Zeke, that defense is really, really good, but if they don't have that running game, then the defense has to be on the field a lot more, and that hurts. I don't care how good your defense is. The more they're on the field, then the less effective they're going to be. and
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things. He helps Dak, everything else like that. Phillip Rivers can play quarterback without a superstar running back, but Melvin does the one thing that he does for the Chargers is they know they can throw him out there and give him a lot of touches. The problem is when you're a running back and you're coming off of a season that the last game you played in, both your knees were wrapped because you were having knee issues. You don't hold a lot of leverage, but this is also the same reason why these guys need to do what they're doing to get the contract situation taken care of going into the new CBA and everything like that. Because both of these guys have touched the ball so many times for the respective teams, and you go back, these guys don't get paid in college. They don't really get paid what they're worth for their first contract in the NFL. They need to get it reworked so that they get paid while they're effective, so that they don't need that second contract as much as they do right now. But for them to get their market value, they have to get overpaid on their second deal. I mean, ask Chris Johnson. He was super effective during his rookie contract, and then after that, nothing. And I don't know what if he had a big second contract or whatever. I'm pretty sure that he lost effectiveness before he got to that point. But that was a guy that was a 2,000-yard rusher, very effective early in his career. But once that speed's gone, once your body starts going, then these guys they can't do it like they used to be able to. Wide receivers probably shouldn't get paid early because most of them take 3 years to break out. It's not the case for running backs, and they get used and abused. That is for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll talk about the Antonio Brown news when we get into the Brown or the Raiders section of this pod. There hasn't been a whole lot of other big news, other than I don't even know. Have you guys? Is there anything that you guys have heard that sticks out to you? I mean, Deontay Foreman being released by Houston. He was a guy that I personally liked, but that injury, and if he didn't take care of himself over the offseason, and that's the reason why he got released, then that's a whole different thing. But Lamar Miller is the head guy there once again. Nothing exciting, does everything okay. What are your guys' thoughts on Foreman and him signing with the Colts?
uh, I don't know what to think about that guy anymore. He's one of those guys that everyone in fantasy always gets excited about coming out of college, and then they get injured, and then you're always waiting, right? You're always waiting for them to come back because it's going to be something. And it's been a long time, and he hasn't done anything yet. And if the team that has Lamar Miller, the perpetual low-end RB2 plotter, doesn't even want him, I don't see how he gets any work behind Marlon Mack and Naheem Hines and all the other guys in Indy.
What about
Yeah,
you, Brad?
it's definitely not a good situation for Foreman. I mean, I don't have any shares of him, but I wouldn't give a third for him at this point. I mean, he's just not. He just holds no value. I mean, and there's still, no running backs come back from his injury and been successful. I mean, so if he's not breaking that mold, the bigger thing for me is I'm interested to see what Houston's going to do because their running back core is quite thin. It almost gives me the vibe like maybe they're a team that's tried to call LA about Melvin Gordon or some of these other teams with running backs that are kind of on the fringe. It's like, what's the move that Houston's going to make because Lamar Miller can't get it done by himself? I mean, he's injury prone for the most part. He gets dinged up every year. So there's got to be something else,
sorry, I was getting some more NFL news that I'll talk about here in a minute, but yeah, it was very weird. It was very odd. So I'm guessing there was more. I heard he was out of shape and whatnot, but Houston, I don't even think they have a GM right now, which puts them in a really awkward situation. Like, I think they are without GM. I don't know if the owner's running it, if they've got the coaches running it. I don't know. I don't know who's making personnel decisions for them right now, because I believe, I could be incorrect now, they could have brought somebody in.
No, I don't think that. I think they still GM-less, and I think it's Bill O'Brien that's making a lot of those decisions.
Which is terrifying.
Definitely.
If you're a Texans fan.
Yeah, that's definitely a different situation. Okay, so another bit of news that I didn't even think about is this whole contract for Tom Brady, 2 years, $70 million, but it's void after 2019. So this was basically just a little New England trickery, where they signed this deal, and it's going to give Tom Brady an $8 million raise, but it's going to save New England $5.5 million. So on the cap. So it's kind of a weird little deal that they did. But then, like, Tom Brady immediately, like, puts his house up for sale, and New England might not even have him as a quarterback next year. What did you guys think about the whole Tom Brady contract, Brad?
Yeah, I want them to retire. I want Belichick. I want Brady just to be done. Like, this is ridiculous. Your wife makes more money than you anyway, so what are you worried about your contracts for? It seems very much like you could easily see Tom Brady playing elsewhere next year. Like, it's almost like they could just, cut ties with him after the season if they wanted. But I don't know. It was weird. It seemed like a really strange contract in my mind.
Craig, what are your thoughts, buddy?
Well, I don't even know what to think about these guys. The end of the road's got to be coming for Brady, right? I would think that organization and the man himself is smart enough when they look back at the last few seasons to see, strong start every year. And then by the end of the year, it's let's dink and dunk our way to another Super Bowl if we're lucky, because Brady can't throw down the field anymore. I guess it's cool that he got a little bit of a raise. He's been taking pay cuts for a quarterback of his resume for a long time now. So good for him, but I agree with Brad. Let's move on. Let's get the next era going.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that next era bit, but I do think that he is a guy that has taken these pay cuts in order to put personnel around him and make sure that the organization didn't get hamstrung. I think that's partially because he knows that there was risk going outside of that Belichick system. But yeah, it's just funny. People are also saying that the $28.3 million AAV is a dig at Atlanta for the 28-3
28-3 comeback.
Well, you know that the Patriots did put 283 diamonds in their Super Bowl ring from that year, right? So they've been trolling the Falcons. So that would just be a little funny bit of trollage there, if that's really what they did with that contract, making it 28.3. Okay, so I just got these little bits of news. Damian Williams returned to practice for the Kansas City Chiefs. You don't, Craig, what do you think of Damian Williams?
Well, I think it kind of kills my one remaining Carlos Hyde share in Dynasty. But I don't know. I mean, any running back with Andy Reid and that version of Andy Reid's offense is going to have a legitimate chance. I'm not as excited about him as everybody else. I think, when does he revert back to the Miami Pumpkin instead of this, like, Kansas City darling? I guess he could be good, but I think we'll see a couple different running backs have that role this year before the year is over in Kansas City.
Well, Brad did the old. I've
Same.
been a big fan. I definitely think that he might not be the best runner on the team. I think Carlos Hyde is. I mean, the numbers he put up last year were abysmal. They were just absolutely atrocious from an efficiency standpoint. Obviously, Kansas City is a system that running backs can perform beyond their skill
Talent level. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is a guy that Player Profiler has the best comparable as Joe Mixon. He's got speed. He's explosive. He can catch the ball. I think at minimum he's going to be heavily involved in the passing game, which we've seen guys like Duke Johnson, James White, Kenyon Drake, who's mostly in the passing game last year, be top 15 fantasy assets. I mentioned I didn't like the other night where his value was now because he's going top 3 rounds. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I wouldn't be doing that in Dynasty. But for this year, I think that if he's healthy, that he's going to really propel a lot of teams over the top that got him for cheap with other options. Guys that might have had like Gurley and Marlon Mack, and then you've got Damian Williams as your number 3. I think those guys are really going to benefit. The guys that went out and paid this price for him are gonna hurt. The next bit of news was Quincy Enunwa left Jets practice. Personally, Enunwa was dead to me as soon as he was moved out of the slot. Either of you feel different about that? Brad first.
No, I mean I like Enunwa, but that injury history can't be denied, and and that's really all he had. He was a big slot receiver, and we know how much the Roto Heat team likes big slot receivers. I mean that's why we're on the Devin Funchess train and some of these other guys that really should be in there. So yeah, Enunwa I haven't really had any value on in a while now. So it doesn't surprise me he's hurt again, but sucks for him. I like the guy prior to this.
What about you, Craig?
I cannot fully express to you guys how anti-Adam Gase I am. So I don't like anybody on that team. I mean, I won't even own Bell anywhere because I won't draft him as high as he's going to go. I mean, it does suck that he's hurt. You never want to see somebody get hurt. But I don't want any pieces of that offense if I can avoid it.
I'll take all the Bell. I'll take all the Bell. He's for sure gonna catch 100 passes this year, I think. Even though the bit of news I got right before that was Jets don't have a plan for how they're going to use Bell yet. It's just I'm with you. Obviously, being a Bears fan, like Adam Gase, is just I don't get it. Like some of the stuff he does, like obviously last year with Kenyon Drake and giving Gore so many touches, like the as efficient as Kenyon Drake was, there was no reason. So who the hell knows what he's gonna do? But I'm taking the chance on Bell that he's gonna get 100 catches, and we know what he can do with the ball after he gets it in his hands. So hopefully something cool happens. All right, so is there any other news that you guys spotted that you'd like to mention here real quick before we get into the meat of this episode?
No, I saw a little tidbit about Antonio, but we can talk about that in a second.
Oh, great. It looked like it was a good one by your smirk, so I'm excited for that. Brad, do you have anything real quick?
Nope, nothing of value. Just a bunch of nobodies doing nothing.
All right, so before we get into the meat, I want to remind everybody that you can watch live on Facebook in our group or follow our page, facebook.com/RotoHeat. You can watch on Twitch TV, twitch.tv/RotoHeat, or you can watch on YouTube, all of it live. Normally Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. If you don't want to watch, You can tune in on Spotify. We are now approved on iTunes, Google Play Music, Podbean. We're on all those places, or you can check out rotoheat.com. Thursday nights, 9 o'clock p.m., Dynasty Roundtable with Brad Menendez here and whoever he has as a guest that night, talking a little bit of IDP and everything Dynasty football. And we've also got Sully's 2 Cents, the solo podcast by Rob Sullivan, the dedicated Roto Heat member that just cranks out content like no other, from up there in Canada. You'd think it was hockey, but it's not. It's all football.
Not the biggest hockey guy.
All right, so the Oakland Raiders. We've got a whopping 4 guys in Superflex ADP and a whopping 5 guys in regular ADP. Antonio Brown, he's going to be the talk because he's just the talk. He is 19th overall right now, wide receiver 8. Obviously, he is 30 years old, but he's a little polarizing because, normally guys this high up in the draft, you don't see a deviation of a full round with these guys. But he went as high as 13, and he went as low as 25. You had a little bit of news on him, Craig, so why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so I read this article just before we got on here that came out just a couple hours ago in the San Diego Tribune, written by a doctor that had looked at. Did you guys see the pictures of his feet, by the way?
I have not, and I don't want to see pictures of feet.
Boys, no, you don't. I promise you. He posted pictures of his feet on his Instagram, and it's pretty gnarly. But this doctor looked at him and says that he doesn't have frostbite, right? That was a mischaracterization by people familiar with the situation. I guess he had some condition called like maceration of the feet, but it's like trench boot, right? People whose feet get too wet for too long, the skin starts to slough off a little bit, which is already gross. But then he went to go do this cryogenic thing and like didn't wear the right shoes or something, and so he got frost burn instead of frost bite. So like just giant chunks of the bottom of his feet fell off, like froze and fell off, and it's gross, but I know that, like, I got an alert earlier today that said that the Raiders now have no timetable on him after he was day to day. But according to this one doctor that writes for the San Diego Tribune, he thinks it's like a 10 to 12 day recovery period. It's just the dead skin has to fall off, and then he'll be okay to go. So he should be good to go at the beginning of the season, no problem. So if you are a fan of him, and you probably should be, now's the time to go out and steal him away from people who think he might miss games in the season, because it looks like he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, and I'm personally one of those fans. I think this dude is going to get so many targets in this offense. They have very few weapons, and Derek Carr needs that guy that he can trust, and I think they've been trying to build that up with these 2 guys since Antonio Brown got traded there. I would not be surprised if Antonio Brown had another one of those 190 not receptions, that would be disgusting, but 190 target seasons, and we know he catches everything. And Derek Carr can throw the short, medium game, especially if they have an effective running game, which we'll talk about Josh Jacobs here in a minute. But I just think that this guy's going to get peppered. They paid him a bunch of money. They gave up, a third and a fifth. Or what? I might have that confused with a different trade, but they gave up draft capital.
I think it was a third and a fifth. Yeah. So, I think it was a third and a fifth.
But they gave up some draft capital, and then they signed the guy. They are going to pepper the shit out of him, and we know that Gruden likes his veterans. So I definitely think this guy is going to be he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver, pending on frostbite and burn and whether or not he wears the right gear into the cryo the next time, because I heard that's what happened. He didn't wear the right feet gear, whatever. I've never done cryo before, but I'm going to make sure if I ever do that I wear the right gear. But Brad, what are your thoughts on Antonio Brown? He's and his ADP right now. Are you cool with 19 overall?
For this year, I think it's definitely a safe place. I mean, you're going to get the value out of him. I mean, just look at, the guys that have left the team. So Jordy Nelson, Mari Cooper, Brandon LaFell, Martavis Bryant, Seth Roberts. That's like 250 targets
Jared
right there
Cook
alone. Yeah, and Jared Cook as well. I mean, just the receivers alone, it's like 250 plus targets that are going to be left. They're not going to throw them all to Tyrell Williams. I mean, Hunter Renfrow may be a sexy sleeper pick for the dynasty guys, but Antonio Brown's getting those. He's probably getting somewhere between 160 and 190 targets, I would guess, easily. And he'll catch most of those because that's what he does. So I like him. I mean, I have him in a couple leagues, and guys have been going at me like crazy. Paul, I'm looking at you. And been trying to get him for cheap, and I'm just not selling. Even if I'm rebuilding, I'm not going to sell him for pennies on the dollar. I mean, I'm going to hold him until I get what he's worth, and I would encourage everybody else to do the same. The guy's still got many, many years of high value. I'd say easily probably 2 to 4 years because of his work ethic. I mean, I wouldn't be selling him cheap at this point. What do you think, Craig?
I love him. I love him in this offense. I got to admit, I'll just preface this whole thing. I know the Raiders were hot garbage last year, but I kind of think they might be sneaky this year. The whole team is different. They gave the whole team an overhaul. Like you said, they kicked out every wide receiver they had. Literally, no one's returning. So Brown is by far the most talented on the team. The drop off from Roethlisberger to Carr might exist. It might not. Carr was pretty good at the start of his career, so I'd be buying him everywhere I can, personally.
Yeah, definitely. And like Brad was saying, there's not a player in the NFL that works. Antonio Brown is nuts. He is a nut job. He's got the weird little mustache. He's got the weird colored hair. He says all kinds of weird shit. But I've been following him on Instagram for like 4 years now, and nobody works harder than that guy. And if Larry Fitzgerald can play till he's 34, I don't see a reason why Antonio Brown can't. Obviously, he's not going to gain dynasty value for you. So if you're gonna have him, you need to be in a win now mode. If not, you need to move him, and probably right now is not a good time because people, between it being the Raiders and his feet falling off, you're not gonna get what he's valued at. But if you wait until like week 3 and he's already got like 35 targets, people are gonna see that he's still gonna be productive, and you should be able to get some good value out of him. But next is Tyrell Williams at the wide receiver position. New acquisition coming over from Los Angeles Chargers. And this guy has he's had some spurts. He had a 1,000-yard season with Phillip Rivers the year that, I believe it was the year Keenan Allen had the lacerated kidney and all that fun stuff. But, he has that long playability, which doesn't play into what Carr has done the last 2 years at least. As Craig said, Carr was really good in the 2016 season before his injury. But if he bounces back, can Tyrell Williams have any value, Brad?
Oh, I think so. I mean, with the Chargers, they just had a lot of mouths to feed, and Tyrell Williams wasn't the most dangerous target they had. I think in this offense, there's plenty of room for him to have value, and he catches well. I mean, he's a 60% catch rate guy, on his career. So it's not like he's got a big wingspan, so it's not like he can't go up and get some of those contested balls. And he does a pretty good job high pointing the ball as well. So I think there's value. I mean, obviously they're going to pepper Antonio Brown, but they're also going to roll coverage towards Antonio Brown. So Tyrell Williams is going to get, some one-on-one looks, and that's going to bode well for him, especially if they go deep. So, unfortunately, he'll be one of those guys where you're going to have a week where he gets, one catch for 12 yards, and then the next week he's going to blow up for, 100 and a touchdown because he had a couple of deep catches. I mean, so I don't think he's one of those consistent guys, but I think he's definitely got value.
He's definitely going to be a best ball and DFS type guy. You're going to look for those matchups in DFS and throw him in there. And then in best ball, you're just going to, obviously wait for those weeks where he does, catch 2 40-yard passes, one for a touchdown, and scores you some points that way. Craig, what are your thoughts on Williams?
Yeah, I agree. He's going to be serviceable, wide receiver 3 for your team, maybe. He'll have flex appeal. I'm with you in best ball. In best ball formats, you got to find those receivers that have the big play ability because that's such a volatile position. So he's going to win you some weeks there. I mean, he's not going to make or break your redraft league this year, right? He's not going to win you any games, but solid fill in for when your stud's on a bye too. So he's going to have value. He should be just fine. And like Brad said, other than Hunter Renfrow, maybe siphoning off some targets out of the slot, who else are they going to pass to? They don't have any other receivers, and Brown's going to see some double coverage. So Tyrell should get work.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And if he runs some routes that he didn't run in LA, if he can become at least a moderate player in the short to medium game, then he could definitely have a lot more value in this offense. It's crazy to me. He is going 183, and he's going behind Darren Waller. And I feel like this is just nuts. Obviously, we'll just go right into this tight end and get it over with real quick, since we don't really have any other wide receivers to talk about. Darren Waller, I am getting a little bit excited, but I'm not going to be able to get to the point where I'm more excited about Darren Waller than I am about Tyrell Williams. We're talking about a guy that's been a 1,000-yard receiver and has shown skill to a tight end, but this is the Jared Cook effect. Jared Cook led this team in targets last year and receiving, and he was really the only guy on this offense, though, other than a aged Jordy Nelson and Seth Roberts and Brandon LaFell, but we know about those guys. Those guys
garbage.
They are who they are. But the fact that Waller's going 161 and Williams is going 183 kind of boggles my mind. I don't mind taking Waller there. I kind of feel like Williams should be up ahead of that spot, though. What do you guys think about Darren Waller? Craig, why don't you go first?
Hot take time. I love him. And only because he's like 6'6", 260. What a giant beast. Tight end, right? There's like 5 good tight ends for fantasy in the entire league, maybe only 4. So if he ends up being even moderately decent, he's going to finish as a top 12 guy, and you can get him for like free. Plus, he's a big bodied monster. Now, I'm not all excited about him because of his whatever writer from The Atlantic calling him unguardable in training camp. Like, who cares? But he's got opportunity, and he's huge. So I'd take a risk on him. Why not?
Brad, what are your thoughts on Mr. Darren Waller?
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing for him is he was converted to tight end in Baltimore when they had 70 tight ends, so the kid was never going to get a chance. So, he has, in my mind, he's more dynasty relevant, like for the long game. This year, I wouldn't expect him to get peppered with anywhere near what Jared Cook had, like 60 or 70 targets last year. I mean, there's no way that kid's getting, I would expect him probably to get 30 to 40 maybe. It's going to be the Antonio Brown show, and then Tyrell Williams is going to be in a close second there. And, and it's not like Oakland is a prolific passing offense. They're going to be focusing on their main guys, and, Waller will get some targets, and he'll continue to develop because we've seen it. He's grown every year in the league, but I I like him. I have no issues with him. I mean, if you're stashing him and he's kind of your tight end 2, tight end 3, and you're hoping that maybe in a couple of years he can be relevant for you. But this year, I certainly, if you're redrafting, I would take Tyrell Williams definitely before I take Darren Waller.
I'm gonna assume you were meaning receptions and not targets in the one section.
Yes, reception. What do you have? 68 receptions. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean I knew what you meant. It just came out
Yeah, he had over
as
100
targets.
targets. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Waller's not getting close to that 101 target share, not with Antonio Brown in town now and Tyrell Williams in town now. So I definitely agree with you there. But I think that this offense is going to have more. They're going to sustain more drives. So there are going to be more targets to go around, and there's going to be more touchdown upside, especially for that 6'6" guy. So this is a guy that I do think could be a sneaky 10 touchdown guy in this offense because we don't know how Jacobs is going to do, and we're gonna move into to Jacobs at running back, but I do think he's sneaky, and he's at that price point where if it doesn't work out, it's not going to hurt you. There's only upside at his price, so I don't mind that at all. My only thing is that I just think Tyrell Williams is a little undervalued in that range. So Josh Jacobs, he is the 34th overall player, 16th running back off the board. Is he overvalued, Craig?
No, I do not think so. I did a breakdown for our player breakdown series on Jacobs, and the research, the numbers are amazing. Rookie running backs taken in the first round like that average 283 touches a year. That alone makes him valuable, right? And there's no one else on the team to steal touches from him. I guess maybe Jalen Richard is still going to catch some passes, but everything I've read out of training camp says that Jacobs is going to probably siphon 50 to 60% of Richard's touches away. So that'd be 30 to 40 catches or targets at least. Opportunity's king, right, in fantasy. And this is a guy who I think has legit top 10 running back upside because of all the touches he's going to get. And he's going in the third round. Like, yeah, I'll take that guy there every time.
Brad, what are your thoughts?
I can't knock the guy who did the breakdown. I mean, he knows what he's talking about here. I mean, it's the tough thing for me is I like Jalen Richard a lot because I'm a PPR guy. Like I love running backs that have that good catch rate, and Richard is trusted in this offense. It's hard for me. I mean, he only had 55 rushing attempts last year, so it wouldn't surprise me if the team had 387 total rushing attempts last year. It wouldn't surprise me if Jacobs had 300 carries, 320 carries. I mean that certainly seems in the realm of possibility. And then they spell him with Richard as the receiving back. But if Jacobs has good hands and starts taking the catches too, I mean he's an RB1. I mean that it's an easy narrative to build that he has no problem walking right into that. And if you're getting that in the third round, you're probably taking him after guys like Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook, who are injury prone guys who really haven't proven anything, where he just comes right in and is an RB1. I mean that's huge value. So I would agree with everything Craig said. It's a great move if you get him there.
I disagree slightly, and it's not necessarily that I don't think Josh Jacobs is good. I'm definitely rooting for the kid, but when I look at some of the guys that are going after him, that's where my issue comes into play. Like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Kenny Galladay. Even though I'm not a huge Kenny Galladay guy, I want ahead of him. Calvin Ridley, I'd rather have ahead of him. So that's my only thing. I think he's in line with the running backs, so it's probably more that these guys are devalued than it is that he's overvalued. Obviously, he's going to drop a little bit because we're going to see Tyreek Hill jump up ahead of him in this month's ADP with the news out. But he was my number 2 running back and my number 3 overall player in this rookie draft. Craig's we won't even get into it. We'll talk about it during the Bears episode. But
yeah, I know who your number 1 is.
and don't worry, I'll bring that info during the Bears because people think I'm just being a homer, but I'm not. I'm telling you, this guy's going to be a monster. But anyways, Josh Jacobs, I think the reason why I disagreed was because I think Richard's going to be more involved. We were talking about those targets that are opened up, the 250 you said, plus I don't think did you count Jared Cook's 101 in that? Brad?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I didn't put Jared Cooks in there.
So it's like 350 targets that opened up. And,
right.
I think that the guys that get the most targets, the 3 guys are actually going to be Brown, Williams, and then Richard. And I think Richard's going to be heavily used as a pass-catching back in that offense. He was very, very good last year on his points per touch, and I'm pulling that up right now. He was actually the 8th running back in the NFL on points per touch on his 136 touches. He averaged 1.15 points per touch in fantasy. Obviously, there's not a direct correlation to actual NFL production when it comes to that, but typically when you see guys that are above, or good in that, they're actually being efficient on the football field too. So when you look at the guys ahead of them, you're looking at some other pass catching backs, but you can remove one of them because it was Capri Bibbs, and but then you've got guys like Duke Johnson, James White, Tariq Cohen, Alvin Kamara, Darren Sproles, who you can probably remove now too. So he was a guy that was efficient in the passing game, and I think they're going to continue using him in that role. Not that Jacobs isn't going to be able to catch any, but I would think that you might be able to get 55, 60 catches from Richard, and then another 30 to 40 from Jacobs. And if you're going to run Jacobs close to 300 times, you probably don't want him catching the ball a whole lot, unless their thought is let's use him up and spit him out like the running back plan is for a lot of people. But I would think that they're both going to be involved, and that they're both going to have value for you on your team. So I do think Jalen Richard is going to be more involved. Is there any other running back on this team? Obviously, there's none in the ADP that you guys have an eye on that if Jacobs went down that you could plug in. I'm pretty sure Chris Warren's gone now. Didn't he get released? And that
did.
was a guy that a lot of people were on. Who if you're the Jacobs owner and you're looking for a stash at the end of your bench in case he goes down, is there anybody here that you even get excited about, or you just one for all? It's Jacobs and die.
Yeah, look at their depth chart. It's Doug Martin, DeAndre Washington, Mac Brown.
Yeah. I'd rather take a flyer on somebody else's handcuff, right? Like give me Dalvin Cook's handcuff.
You guys remember that DeAndre Washington hype a couple years ago?
Yeah.
That was like Christian Michael hype, man. It was for real. It was for real. But that was pre-Doug
And it
Martin.
went as well.
Right? It went as well.
Yeah.
All right. So the last guy we got to talk about is Derek Carr at quarterback. As we've mentioned before, this guy started off his career, was actually pretty good, was having a great 2016 season before he broke his leg. And I don't know if when he came back it was just kind of a scared thing or what it was, but he has not played very well the past 2 years. I know 2017, I was reading some stuff. He was like the worst in the NFL on passes longer than 15 yards. Um, Everybody tried to blame Amari Cooper, but we've seen that that wasn't the case when he went and played very well with Dak Prescott, who is another guy that I don't think is a great quarterback. But you can't really put all the blame on Amari Cooper anymore because he showed that that wasn't the case, and they played well the first 2 years together. So right now, Carr is going 195. I think he actually went undrafted in most of the leagues. We do 16 rounds, 192 players. Oh, dang it. I hit the wrong thing.
Well, while you're looking, just an interesting fact as I'm looking at his statistics. Last year was his best statistical output. He completed 68% of his passes for the most yards he's ever thrown for, over 4,000. And the most sacks he's ever taken. I mean, at 51. So, he may have been crappy throwing deep balls, but he definitely was efficient when he threw the ball.
Well, he did. I know at one point he actually had about the same or lower average air yards per pass than Eli Manning. So you can dink and dunk yourself to 4,000 passing yards and a good completion percentage. But that was like mid-season, because I remember I was looking at all that when Amari Cooper was traded and trying to figure out like what was going on there. But yeah, he did. He went undrafted in 4 of our drafts, but he went 158th in the only one that he went in. So it's actually probably a little skewed. He's probably actually not as valuable as the ADP would show, because there's such a huge deviation there. And we don't know where he would have went in these ones that he went undrafted, if not. But I think this is a guy that was going in the 12th round last year in ADP, and his team's a lot better around him this year. He's got more offensive weapons. The running game is young and fresh, and not Doug Martin and Marshawn Lynch old. I still think that Antonio Brown is one of the top 3 receivers in the league skill wise, until he shows us different. It's hard for me to say if he was going in the 12th round a year ago, and now he's going undrafted in 16 round drafts. I think he's got to be undervalued, right, Craig?
Yeah, and this will be one of those years, make or break. It's going to tell us a lot, but in my opinion, he showed he can do it. If it took him a long time to come back and rehab from an injury, that's one thing. If he's mentally weak, that's another. But I mean, if you're taking quarterbacks late, or you're in a 2-quarterback league or super flex, he's totally worth a roster spot. I'm the type in redraft, if it's 1 quarterback, I won't take a quarterback till the very, 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 very end, maybe not even at all if I don't have to. So I'd be happy to have Carr on my team, because I think his weapons are so much better. I think last year and the year before are anomalies, and we should just throw him out and see how he does this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm the same way. I will not take, especially in redraft, I will not take a quarterback till like the last 3 rounds of a draft.
Yeah.
And that's where, and that depends. If I don't have to take a kicker or a defense, then it could be quarterbacks in the last 2 rounds that have good matchups week 1s and 2. Brad, what are your thoughts on Mr. Derek Carr? Paul says that Derek Carr looked, in 2018, he looked afraid like David Carr looked like in his career when he was getting sacked a record amount of times.
Ooh.
Yeah, well, that's what they had in common last year. I mean, Derek Carr got sacked 51 times. I mean, 8% of the time he dropped back, somebody hit him. I mean, it's like, yeah.
For example,
you're going to start seeing ghosts.
If you think that the 50 touchdown passes that Patrick Mahomes was a lot, think about just getting hit more times than that.
Yeah, that's rough.
Sacked more times than that, not just hit.
Yeah, Derek Carr, I've never really had a big issue with him, but I've never been a huge fan of him. He's a guy. He's okay. I like him more than say like Marcus Mariota. I mean, like I would rather have Derek Carr than someone like Mariota because I don't see, Mariota's game just doesn't translate for me. Where Derek Carr's a pocket passer. You like Carr better than
Oh
Mariota,
man,
or Mariota better than Carr?
I do.
I'll take the legs, and he's not afraid. I mean, the dude played with a bad nerve in his throwing elbow last year, but it's neither here nor there. I mean, they're both dropping down my boards, that's for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, Carr has never been a guy that, you know, he's gonna need to get better at the deep ball if he's gonna keep these receivers happy. So I'll be interested to see what comes from this year, but I don't think he gets a long leash. I mean, if this year doesn't go well with the receivers he has, I think they look elsewhere next year.
Hmm.
Yeah, and like you said, there's three quarterbacks that I think are in that range of they need to improve this year, or they're on the inside looking out, and then on the outside looking in come 2020, and that is Carr, Mariota, and Winston. I think all of them need to take steps forward, or their teams are going to look to improve that position next year, and we've basically said everything that you can say about Carr. There was a time where he was an MVP candidate. People were talking about him being an MVP candidate in 2016 when the Raiders were playing really well. He was playing really well, and then that leg injury happened, and it's just like since then he has not been able to put it together. And if it's upstairs, it's kind of like a baseball player getting hit in the helmet. Some of them guys, they get hit in the head when they're at bat. They never come back. They're never able to put it together again, and it's just something that you can't figure out. So hopefully that's not the case. He watched his brother get beat up, and that's probably in the back of his mind. He breaks his leg. That's in the back of his mind. And then you've got Gruden yelling at you and shipping everybody out of town, so that's in the back of your mind. So there's a lot going on there for the Raiders. Plus, they're trying to move to Las Vegas, so he's probably wanting to stick around so he can do all the fun Vegas stuff. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to say about the Raiders before we get into the way we end each of these episodes?
I'm surprised we talked this long about the Raiders.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, we talked a lot of news and notes before, so we will say that it wasn't like we talked a full hour about the Raiders. Okay, so as we said, they've got a whopping 5 guys on the ADP here. I think this is the fewest, and if we average them out, 3 of these guys went undrafted in at least 2 of the leagues that we drafted in. So really, they've got 2 guys that were actually drafted in all 5 drafts, which is by far the lowest of any team that we've covered so far. So this question's kind of dumb, because normally we do, Antonio Brown's at 19, Jacobs is at 34. If you were going to pick one of these guys to drop out of the top 100, which would it be? But I think this one's just simple. Everybody's going to say Antonio Brown because of age, but neither of them are going to drop out, so we won't even go there. So we're going to have fun, though. We've got this whole roster to pick from. If there's a guy that's not in the top 100 that could move up into the top 100 or is going to move the most, who would you pick out of all those guys? You've got an entire offensive roster to choose from. Which one of you wants to go first? You're both researching right now, like who could it be?
I feel like we're both going to say the same little slot receiver. I could be wrong, but
yeah, that was my first thought. I was like, he's the only other guy that I think that we really haven't said much about.
Yeah. So yeah, Hunter Renfrow, I guess.
You can choose from Tyrell Williams, Darren Waller, and Derek Carr as well. The guys that are on there. It's just like we don't even like the guys that are on there.
I don't really. I mean, let's be honest.
This is a terrible situation. So basically what we're saying is that they are going to have another top 100 player next year, but they are going to come out of the draft or free agency. That's where they're coming from. My guy would be Richard if I was going to pick one. Brad, are you going with Renfrow also? This is a
No, I'll throw a random name out just because he's a guy that's had some intrigue over the years when he was with Arizona. J.J. Nelson. The dude is super fast. I mean, the guy runs like a 4.2 40. And if they use him kind of as a slot receiver, maybe he beats out Renfrow and he's kind of the slot guy. I could see him kind of sneaking his way into the conversation. If the offense gets better and becomes more efficient and they go deep a lot, and I mean, I'm just trying to grasp straws on this one, but that's another name.
Well, we all are, and like Paul in the chat says Tyrell, and I could see that. I just think that Richard's going to be more involved in the passing game. That's why I go with him. And we know how fast running backs can go up the board just simply based off of there's so few of them when you get in the, rostering 2-3 guys. They can move up that board really quick. So that would be why I pick him. Let me look at this chat and see if we have anything here.
I've been watching. It's mostly Paul talking about the 2020 receivers that the Raiders could draft.
Yeah, that book's completely open, and we can guess right now on who the receivers are going to be that teams could take. But I'm not a Devy guy, but how that college season changes every year. It's not like anybody thought Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield were going to be the number 1 overall picks going into last college season. So I'm excited for some college football to get going and for everything to just get shooken up since everybody's so high on that 2020 class.
Yeah.
All right. People in the chat, do you have anything else to say? Oh, Paul said, wait, they like hotheads. CD Lamb.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that for me, it's like with as much as they spent on the receivers this year, I can't see them drafting one early. Like it seems like they would go at a different position,
quarterback, right?
You know what?
Probably a quarterback.
There is one guy that I forgot to mention, and I don't want to forget because it will just piss me off because I did this the other night and forgot to mention someone. They do have Ryan Grant, who was a hot topic going into the Colts last year. I'm not going to talk about him. But Marcel Aitman, who is just a monstrosity of a man. I think he's another guy that's like 6'4", 6'5", and doesn't have a lot of speed. But
he should be their tight end, but he's a wide receiver.
He's a guy that had 31 targets last year. He did score 1.17 fantasy points per target last year, which seeing a guy that's that he's not very experienced. He was a raw talent coming out, and for him to even put up a positive fantasy points per reception was pretty interesting for me. So that's another guy that could kind of be sneaky. He's got size. He's got to at least be a red zone threat for them. Just a guy that could creep up. I don't think he's going to jump up into the top 100 or anything, but just a guy that, I play super deep rosters on most of my dynasty teams. So if you've got roster spots open, he's a guy that you could look at. He's only 24 going into his second season. So, I did want to mention him, not that I love him or anything, but he played 7 games and had 31 targets. So he was actually getting a little bit of action there. They obviously have other weapons now though, but yep, Marcel Aitman, just a guy to kind of keep in the back of your mind.
I like it.
All right, anything else, fellas? Do you want to close this out with the sales pitch, Brad, or you guys got anything to say? Because nobody in the chat's saying anything. So
the Raiders weren't the hot topic we thought they'd be.
Tomorrow night is a hot topic. Tomorrow night is the Cleveland Browns. So I don't know if you have a plan for the round table tomorrow night, or if you wanna do some Browns talk.
Yeah, I could jump on the Browns episode. There's plenty to talk about.
That's up to you. If not, I can go earlier or later after you. So you let me know on that. But we are talking Cleveland Browns tomorrow, and that's actually got some excitement to it.
Yeah, that should be pretty easy. Yeah, yeah. No, I don't have anything else Raiders wise. I mean, like I said, I was
Me
pleasantly
neither.
surprised that we had this much to talk about.
Well, it's such a polarizing team between Gruden and Antonio Brown being there and everything else. Like I don't think anybody really knows what's going to happen on the offensive side of the ball this year.
Yeah. You either love them or hate them.
Oh, I think we can
Hard
all
Knocks will
hate
be
them, but
interesting, that's for sure. Hard Knocks will definitely be interesting.
yeah, I haven't watched the first
Yeah.
episode yet. Have you guys?
No, I haven't seen it. Is
No, me
is the
neither.
first? I don't think the first one's out yet, is it?
Yes, last
I
night was
thought
the
it was
first
last night.
episode. Yep.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to watch it then when we're done.
All right. So, what you want to do the sales pitch? Get us out of here, Brad?
Sure, why not?
I can do it if you don't want to.
No, I don't.
Sales pitch. Go to rotoheat.com. Click on all the social media links at the top. Check us out on Spotify, Podbean, iTunes, Dynasty Heat Seekers, Sully's 2 Cents. Check us out on YouTube. We got these player breakdowns going. If you guys haven't watched the player breakdowns going, first one was Leonard Fournette from Craig. Brad's dropped the Nick Chubb so far. Today we dropped Kevin Pond's Kerryon Johnson. These things they're lighting it up on YouTube. It's been some of our most popular content to date. So if you haven't checked out the player breakdowns, I got a whole playlist set up over on the YouTube channel. Check it out. If there's players that you want to see, we've got a long list of guys that we're gonna do. I even added some for myself to do because like I hate life and just keep adding more for myself to do. But there were a couple guys that I wanted to do today, so I added them to the list. But we've got like 28, 29 more guys on the list to drop. But if there's anybody that you specifically want to see, I know there's a lot of polarizing players this year. So if we missed anybody, make sure you drop a comment on one of the posts saying that you want to see a certain player, and we will put them together and get them out here before you start drafting in week 4 of the preseason. I'm nuts. We're drafting redraft right now because, we we love watching our guys go down before real football happens. But yeah, did that cover the sales pitch? Tomorrow's Dynasty Roundtable might not happen. It might be Cleveland Browns talk. We don't know. We wing it.
Yeah.
Everybody here at Roto Heat loves you guys. Thanks for the support. And Craig, I just want to say, great first time on the pod. Really glad to have you on the team. And why don't you send us out?
Thanks, guys. I'm happy to be on the team. This is awesome. And check out the player profiles because they're so good. And we'll see you guys next time, right? rotoheat.com.